Hello everybody, it's vanburman here, welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be doing something slightly different, but very much on sort of theme with what I've been doing previously. So today we are going to be taking a look at the HD 770, or however you pronounce it, 7770. That's how I'm choosing to pronounce it. No, not really. But also, I'm going to be comparing my particular scores on this to another fellow YouTuber. He goes by the name of Random Gaming in HD. He's a guy I've followed for a while, and you know, one of the ultimate, along with a couple other YouTubers, but one of the inspirations for wanting to do this, or sort of like the format, I guess, of doing it. So yeah. Big shout out to him for that, and he did one very recently on this card, talking about this being like one of the last 1 GB cards made, or one of the last decent-ish, I suppose, 1 GB card ever made. So they did actually do a 2 GB version of this particular card, but it's not that easy to get hold of apparently, or if it is, it's extremely expensive. So anyway, he did some tests on games, and all the ones that I've got that he did tests on, I've done it with this one. So he had one of the Asus Direct CU coolers, which are a bit beefier than this. This is very, very basic. It's just a single fan with a, well, what looks like an aluminium block heatsink behind it. So yeah, you know, not bad. It will do the job, and it did do the job perfectly fine, because obviously we're in the open test bench as well. So one of the things he doesn't put on his videos usually is the overclock, or what overclock he's got out of them, I don't believe. And I obviously have overclocked this a bit to try and get the best performance I can. His sort of processor, I think, is probably better, as in it's only 4 cores, 8 threads, but I think those 4 cores are slightly faster than the 1600 AF, even though that is overclocked. So that's just the sort of stuff to bear in mind, you know, when we're going into looking at the scores. But I wanted to give my take on it as well. It also, you know, sort of in one way may validate his scores, and in another way shows you the variance you can get just from card to card potentially, or from overclock to stock, or one system to the next. And as you'll see, you know, there are degrees, a couple of percentages either way in terms of variance on different bits of hardware, or even the same hardware in this case, just with a different cooler. I don't think there's any difference in terms of PCB or anything like that. It's a mid-range card. It seems unlikely that power colour would go to, you know, more or less of a degree compared to Asus for that kind of thing. The other thing as well, you won't be able to see it behind me, but I've done some work on my main computer as well, and we'll probably talk through that at some point. I'm a bit unsure really how to go about talking about that, because basically I didn't do any before comparisons, so it'll only be sort of anecdotally what I've noticed, without any, you know, necessarily stats to back that up. Anyway, without getting too bogged down by that, let's get into this particular video. There will also be my normal suite of tests as well to go through. So hopefully you enjoy it. I'll also put a link to Random Gaming HD in the description. If you like my type of videos, you'll probably like his more. Seems to be a bit more creative with it, and a bit less sort of, I prefer a bit more structure, I think, and he's sort of a bit more free reign. So we'll see how this one goes. Anyway, thanks for watching. Enjoy. So let's get right to it. We're going to start off with Grand Theft Auto 5. So this was played on the lowest settings in DirectX 11. Obviously, a lot of my benchmarks have been in DirectX 10, but still. And there's quite a big disparity between my scores and his, and I think maybe it's because of how we've taken the averages. So mine was done by the in-game benchmark rather than actual gameplay, although actual gameplay is very akin to what comes out of the benchmark. So I don't know if that really plays a part. My one has obviously been overclocked, which I don't know that his has. I think we're both running similar types of RAM, and we're both running Ryzen processors. Obviously, his being the 3100X, which is only a real difference, which may be slightly better for gaming. But I think, from this, it looks like my one potentially has a bit more headroom to increase graphics slightly and still get 60 FPS. Whereas it sort of looks like, with the other score, that low is about the only way you can really go with Grand Theft Auto 5. So we get into a game that I'm not particularly fond of, but one that is used for many benchmarks, especially sort of lower powered graphics cards and what have you. And then that's CS:GO, and we ran this at the lowest settings on at 1080p, which is primarily what a lot of people would look to play this game on, pretty much all the time. So the scores do vary a bit, not as much as we saw previously in Grand Theft Auto 5. But there definitely is, a significant difference. I'm not really sure what that is. You can tell by the gameplay on the screen that, regularly hitting over the average. But it does, have its dips and what have you when you go in and out of the menus and such. But, I would have thought that, it would be experienced the other way as well. Maybe it's just, a different map, potentially. A different game mode or what have you. Something else that might affect the frame rate. But there's a bit of natural variance as well in all of these tests, which is obviously worth remembering. And also, I think the 3100X processor is probably slightly better for this game than the 1600AF, just because I believe it's got a bit of a faster clock speed, even though obviously it has less cores, which, is more favoured by CSGO, also notwithstanding the fact that it is a slightly older title as well, so it's more inclined to be more bound by raw speed rather than cores. So next we're going to look at Skyrim, which is, in this case, a special edition, which I normally don't look at. We normally look at the normal version of Skyrim. But, I've got to say, it was quite nice to, load the special edition. You can see where the, improvements have been made by Bethesda. And I think this was actually a free upgrade as well, which is, don't get me wrong, I'm not that bothered about these sort of upgrades, but it's nice when you do get given them for free. As you can see, I suppose there's not really too much difference. We both would have had a very similar playing experience, and, purely because, the 1% low is 30 or over, and if you're in the 30 to 60 range, you can experience it pretty much the same. I would say, I definitely got a lot more out of it on the high end, than he experienced, but I don't know what that's to. I just hit low. I didn't change anything else, and I don't know if our settings exactly marry up. I would expect from what I saw in Grand Theft Auto 5 that potentially my averages are going to be higher if he has not overclocked them, but I can't imagine, me getting more than, I don't know what I'm doing here, by the way, me getting more than like a 5 or 6 FPS gain. So to see 15.8 on the average is, quite a big difference. And, well, yeah, it's just one of them. I think, potentially with Skyrim, you are definitely more limited VRAM-wise, especially when you've got any sort of mods installed. I think, that was always the big, argument for having more VRAM back in the day. When this would have been a real issue when you were looking at 1 or 2 gig cards, it's, do you want to play Skyrim with loads of graphical mods? Then, you are going to need the extra VRAM because that's where that has to go, for the graphics and textures and what have you. But yeah, I think this run was significantly lower than the benchmark I pulled. It looks actually fairly stuttery as well, but I must say, while I was playing it, I didn't get any of that. And the last one in games that me and Random Gaming in HD share is Tomb Raider. Shadow of the Tomb Raider. There we go, that's what it is. And we run this at 720p low, same as he did. And obviously, the recordings are not the benchmarks because I took them without, the recording, just to give it the best chance possible. And there's a little bit of difference here. See, this is where I would expect, there to be the difference between one having not been overclocked and the other one having been overclocked. So, yeah, I'm led to believe that
in some of the other tests, we've probably had some disparity in settings or what have you. But I think in some cases it does show what you can actually get out of an overclock. Now, I'm a bit disappointed that the 1% low wasn't 30 or much closer to 30, because then there'd be a real sort of argument for overclocking, because you can go from a not playable experience to a very playable one, I would say. Even though with Shadow of Tomb Raider, would you prefer 60 FPS? Probably. Well, no, not probably. Obviously, definitely. Especially if you're going to have to play on 720p low. But it was a nice, interesting one to include. It's not one that I would have included, but it was nice that he decided to do that. I think, we are VRAM limited here as well, which is, probably the big thing for me in this one. And I think, these are the sort of ones where you are going to hit those limits. I don't know if a 2 gig card would have done any better, and it was something I was looking at doing, actually. I was doing the 1 gig versus a 2 gig on this. But yes, as I mentioned earlier, availability has been difficult, to say the least, on that one. And yeah, so there we have it. I would say they're both very similar. But it is just worth knowing, that there is natural variance, and, you've got to look at it 10% potentially either way from what people are showing you on the screen. You could quite easily get, the 770 and not think 770? Yeah, 7,770 and not think that it's playable at all. So it does depend on the rest of your system and whatnot, but I think me and him both try to give the cards the best chance that we can possibly. And yeah, I think it's been really cool to have a look at these. And just want to, if you're watching this, thank you very much for doing your videos. And something I'll continue to draw inspiration from. So let's move on to my benchmarks, my normal suite. Right, now that's all over, we can start looking at my easy benchmark. But we will start with Left 4 Dead first, because I've got quite a good sample size there, and I think it is fairly indicative of where stuff fits in. And as you can see, actually, I was really surprised with the GTX 275. It managed to beat out a card that's a lot newer than it, which I thought was quite interesting. The rest of the benchmarks are actually pretty good. It doesn't score actually that many points for these ones. And I just put Rocket League in there because it's obviously the video that you're seeing, but it was also fairly playable as well. So yeah, not too bad at all, I must say. Moving on to medium benchmarks now, which I guess this is sort of where we start to see what we can really be looking at. And for the low powered ones, it did incredibly well. I've also included the Grand Theft Auto 5 one on there from earlier, just for comparisons. And obviously, the 1% lows are well above 60. It scored hardly any points for this. And I was actually really, really impressed with it. And I think, considering the low power nature of it, it did particularly well. Now, you probably noticed that we have got Doom in the background, so I did try to play Doom, and I was really surprised by the results. I was able to play it at the lowest settings in 720p, really quite comfortably, and something that you could quite happily play the whole game on, which was nice. We then got Skyrim Normal Edition, as that fits into the suite. You'll be able to see that there's quite a big difference now. I sort of, in my mind, thought that it should be compared against the GTX 460, which is a couple of years, nearly 2 years older than this particular card. And the 7700 did very well comparatively. I don't think it suffered from the same hiccups in Skyrim, which I think really is the sort of big difference. Well, the difference maker here anyway, and also did a lot better in The Witcher 2 as well. I think it probably helps the fact that it's newer in that particular sense. So I have also included, the synthetics, if you're interested. I've not compared it to the 460, so I don't know how they look, but just include them anyway. And for the overall comparison, it does a lot better than the 460, and actually it scores under 50, under 25 even. It's pretty much a perfect score. And actually, if you want to play the suite of games that we've seen today, it would be pretty much perfect for it. And it's low power as well, only needs 1/6 pin, a relatively low power supply as well, which is great, as we'll see coming up. Yep, there we go, 350 watt PSU, 1/6 pin, and you can actually get, you know, a modest overclock out of it, but enough to potentially make a big difference. I've noticed that the prices are, you know, do fluctuate quite a bit on these while I've been watching them. It's one of the ones I wanted to review, and you can generally get one for about £20 in the UK, pretty much all day long, which is really nice. It's good to see, you know, that you can get performance like that for, you know, a relatively low cost and a fairly low power consumption. You know, I don't know if it might be worth spending a bit more money and getting a 750 Ti if you want something that's, you know, quite also low powered and good, decent performance. But yeah, I was actually really impressed with it. I thought it did really well. You know, for what was a sort of, I don't know, mid-tier card back then, it holds up surprisingly well today still. I was trying to get this in focus, but it didn't obviously get there. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and yeah, big thanks once again for Random Gaming HD for providing the inspiration for this video, or for the first part of the video. It's always nice to mix things up a little bit, and yeah, hopefully everyone, I'll see you all very soon. Bye for now.